This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we break open the 1995 movie Heat. Now, we recorded this conversation back in October, but saved it to kick off the new year. So as we reflect on the past year, we have the opportunity to look at what we chase and what's really important to us. Will we live in a comedy where we realize the truth and live by it? Or will we choose tragedy, where we know the truth but decide to live aligned with a lie? And what are you attached to? And what can you walk away from? The law and legalism are powerless to transform us, but salvation is offered through relationship. So let's head to the diner and grab a cup of coffee and discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me from Hotlanta is my friend, my buddy, my pal, Britt Mooney. Hey, man.
What's up? What's up, everybody? How you doing, Paul?
I am doing well. We are in the middle of our kitchen renovation. We have been without a sink in the kitchen for about a month now, and it's difficult. And I can't even complain too much because there are people whose kitchens have been out of commission since like April. So it's been like 3, 4, 5, 6 months without a working kitchen, which I got to imagine isn't that healthy. You're doing a lot of takeout.
How much takeout are you doing?
A little, not much. We're my father-in-law lives in town, so we take food over there and we cook in his kitchen. And then, so it's a win-win. We have dinner with him and, we get a place that I don't have to clean up afterwards.
Yeah, there you go.
So how are you? You just got back from Disney.
We got back from Disney. My kids have wands from Harry Potter and they have lightsabers.
I guess technically you got back from Orlando.
I got back from Orlando. Well, Disney was part of it. We did Universal one day and Harry Potter, and we did Star Wars and Hollywood Studios, Disney the second day. We gave our kids a choice. We said, look, this is kind of what we got the money to do. They've never been to Disney, so we really wanted to give them that experience. Yeah. And before they're too old, and now that they're old enough to remember it and really enjoy it, and we gave them the choice of what they wanted to do. And they wanted to do Harry Potter because they are huge Harry Potter fans. Yeah,
that'd be tough
and
to miss.
And they wanted to do Star Wars, and I wanted to do Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what we did. And then we drove back we did that Thursday and Friday, and then drove back, and it took us a couple of days just to recover. We did church, and then it's just like kind of back into the swing of things. Becca and the kids had a day off on Monday, so they had a little more rest. Yeah. But anyway, it was amazing. And, God still just, speaks to me even when I'm at Disney, because he's showing me how the adventures at Disney, there's a false safety, like the First Order captures you on this ride, and you're like, and people are like, what's up? And they're taking selfies with the stormtroopers. And I'm like we wouldn't do that if Hitler had captured us. Right. I mean,
if they were real stormtroopers. Yeah.
Right. He was just showing me how real adventures are actually scary. And we like adventures that are safe. But that's not the adventure that God's called us on. The adventures that God calls us on they're not safe, at least according to this world. But they are safe eternally. They're not safe according to this world. There's no thing that goes over your lap, or
there's no guaranteed outcome.
There's no, and yet, but we are safe. It's just a different kind of safety. We're actually more safe on God's story than we appear to be on these adventures that we can kind of trick ourselves into doing. So anyway, I was still writing devotionals in my brain and, while I was having lots of fun. So it was amazing, man. It was so good.
Awesome. So we are talking about Heat today. The movie came out in 95.
The heat is on.
No,
right?
different. That's isn't that
that's
actually
different.
Beverly Hills Cop?
Yeah, that was Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah. So I was trying to tie in your comment about safe adventures, but I don't think it works with this movie. So we're just going to do sharp left.
There you go.
This movie, one of my favorite podcasts, the Rewatchables podcast put out by The Ringer, they've talked about the Heat. It's not the Heat. It's not Miami. It's not a basketball team. They talk about Heat, but they've talked about it like 2 or 3 times is how much they love this movie. And I was writing down the actors, and I just sort of took the high level ones. There's still a lot of sort of more character actors, but you've got Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, a fabulously ponytailed Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Natalie Portman, Danny Trejo, John Voight, Ashley Judd, Dennis Haysbert, and Hank Azaria.
Oh my God, Hank Azaria.
The voice of The Simpsons making an appearance.
Yeah, the actors alone in this is top notch. I mean, they're so amazing.
This is, and it's interesting. One of the before I watch a movie with this intention of bringing it to a podcast, I have a prayer book. I have a book of liturgies. It's called Every Moment Holy, and this is volume 1. This is a pocket edition, and it's like probably a 5x5 book. These are huge pockets they have.
That's a big pocket.
But it's interesting because they have all these prayers for different things. They have prayers for starting a book or ending a book or doing the laundry, or these prayers because the purpose is to bring the sacred into the sort of the mundane and make every moment holy, as the book says. So there's a prayer for consuming media. And part of the prayer is, help me to discern the stories that are beautifully told, but are ultimately broken. And I think this is a story that is well acted, fabulously acted. It's well done, well shot. As you mentioned before we started recording, it's Michael Mann, Mr. Miami Vice, and just well directed.
Last of the Mohicans, by the way, which is also another beautiful movie.
Right. But ultimately, it's a story that you walk away from feeling a little empty.
Right.
There's not that redemptive twist at the end. Knowing that this is a story that is beautifully told, but that ultimately probably is more of a lie than most of the movies that we've done.
Yeah. This movie is a tragedy.
Yeah.
So here's what tragedies do. So both tragedies and comedies, they both work the same. They bring to us a moral, a theme, and a comedy shows us where everyone realizes the truth, the good part, and that's the end of the movie. The end of the movie was when everyone understands the truth and lives by truth, right? A tragedy, you're still living by truth. You still get to the truth. You have just chosen the lie. You've chosen the destructive part. So a tragedy is a tragedy because the moral still holds true. And in the end, what you see is a loss of what is really important. In a comedy, and I don't mean like a funny movie. A comedy is a movie where you have, like I said, you have a happy ending, basically, where everyone comes to truth at the end and all the villains come to justice and all of that stuff. That's a comedy technically. A tragedy is where people make the wrong choices and their desires pull them to choices that destroy them. But the moral still holds true. Does that make sense? Like this movie proves what's really important, even though these men continually choose what's not important, what is less important, and then their lives suffer loss because of it. And that's a tragedy. And it's important to do movies like this because people live these tragedies every day. people live these tragedies all the time. They choose lives. They choose to chase things that are going to destroy them and are less important than what's really important, than what they should be prioritizing in their life.
Right. Because at the end of the movie, the ones who are still alive, probably half the characters are dead. The ones that are left are isolated and from the people that they care most about. Whether that's Chris and Charlene, whether that's Al Pacino's character, Vincent Hanna, and his wife, whoever it is, they're separated with little to no hope of restoration.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but we're going to go back. We're going to go back. As you mentioned, chasing. We're going to talk about chasing versus pressure and some of the other themes of the movie. But I have a question.
Okay.
Why do we love heist movies? Like, this is ultimately a heist movie, right? And it makes me think of Ocean's 11. It makes me think of The Sting, those sorts of movies. Why do we love these sort of the crafting? And we end up cheering. Oh, The Town. The Town was another one. Actually, I think I for some reason, I enjoyed The Town a little more than Heat, which probably makes me lose my movie watcher critic card or whatever.
Yeah.
But why is it, do you think, that we love these sort of movies and we end up cheering for the criminal?
Well, because we put these characters, if it's well written, The Italian Job is another great one.
Oh,
by
yeah.
the way. That's a great heist movie. Because we put these characters in a situation where they have to be creative and break rules to get something that they want. And that's a basic story. That's every good scene written. Like, somebody has to want something and either they get it or they don't. And when they get it, the story's over, right? And so it's a good movie is a series of people wanting things and that they don't get, right? Your character doesn't, and maybe they don't get it at all at the end, right? And like we see in a sense in this movie, even though they kind of do get what they want. But all that to say is
they get what they want and they realize it sucks.
But they can't help it. Like they're consumed by that, what their desire to chase these things. And that's what makes it a tragedy. But I think heist movies, even though they're criminals, there's certain honor among thieves sort of element to it and there's also a fantasy element to it. I mean, we love to live out fantasies in the media. Like, we know we're not going to fly like Superman, but we want to, watch a movie where we get to fly like Superman. And I think heist movies, they have to make the characters somewhat moral enough. Like, every Fast and Furious movie is basically a heist movie. Yeah. Heat has heist elements to it. Yeah. But they don't spend a lot of time delving into the details. Like a good heist movie or story will go into the details of all the different stuff that they have to do. And there's some of that, but really Heat is a character study. It's really a character study and a tragedy about the fallacy of what we chase and why we lose the things that we lose that are really important. And both men have to deal with this, and they are kind of mirror images of each other. And they set that up pretty early. It's not really something that just happens at the end. And that's kind of the running theme, is that these two characters are really interchangeable, even though they're on different sides of quote unquote the law. And I think there's a lot we can get from that we'll talk about. But I think that's why we like heist movies. It's a fantasy thing, and it's overcoming obstacles, and it's being creative and different technology. There's all sorts of those elements to it, There's
also the element that a heist movie is about being smarter or cleverer than the other person versus needing to be stronger or richer, or all those are in play. But when I think about a movie like The Sting, or even The Great Escape, it was an escape movie, but again, it's sort of like a reverse heist movie. They're trying to steal themselves out of the prison camp.
Right.
And sure, that level of planning and execution. And as you know, with any of them, things go wrong. And I go back to that idea that we've talked about a few times here, that Matthew Dix talks about the great stories are the ones of transformation and revelation. And the thing in this story is nobody transforms. There's no transformation. And I think that's why at the end it feels sad. It feels a little emptier than the movie where, maybe he does leave and he escapes with Edie in the car and they fly off and they're home free. But he can't not do it. He can't not go back.
Both men have choices at the end to change, and they don't take them. Both men have Vincent in the hospital with his wife, and Neil, played by Robert De Niro, with Edie. They both have a chance to transform, and they don't take it. That's why it's a tragedy.
So we're not going to play clips in order. We're going to start with the probably the keystone scene of the movie, and I've split it into two. So this is when Neil and Vincent Hanna meet up for the first time, or the second time, I guess. They go in and have coffee, and if you haven't seen the movie, Vincent Hanna is a detective. He's a homicide detective. And he's investigating because on one of the robberies, somebody died. The three guards of the armored car died. So he gets pulled in. He recognizes the talent of the crew that he's up against. And he's chasing him down. And he decides, I want to meet Robert De Niro's character, Neil, who is a professional thief. Right. And so you've got one guy whose life is his work, and the other guy whose life is his work as well. And they're sitting down in this scene from the diner having coffee. And really, I think they come to the point where they realize that they're just looking in a mirror.
You see me doing thrill-seeker liquor store holdups with a Born to Lose tattoo on my chest?
No, I do not.
Right. I am never going back.
Then don't take down scores.
I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best, trying to stop guys like me.
So you never wanted a regular type life?
The fuck is that? Barbecues and ball games?
Yeah.
This regular type life, that your life?
My life? No, my life. No, my life's a disaster zone. I got a stepdaughter so fucked up because her real father's this large type asshole. I got a wife. We're passing each other on the downslope of a marriage, my third. Because I spend all my time chasing guys like you around the block. That's my life.
Guy told me one time, don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Now, if you're around me and you gotta move when I move, how do you expect to keep a marriage?
Well, that's an interesting point. What are you, a monk?
I have a woman.
What do you tell her?
I tell her I'm a salesman.
So then if you spot me coming around that corner, you're just gonna walk out on this woman? Not say goodbye?
That's the discipline.
That's pretty vacant, no?
Yeah, it is what it is. It's that or we both better go do something else, pal.
I don't know how to do anything else.
Neither do I.
I don't much want to either.
Neither do I.
You know, we're sitting here, you and I, like a couple of regular fellas. I mean, you do what you do, I do what I gotta do. And now that we've been face to face, if I'm there and I gotta put you away, I won't like it. But I'll tell you, if it's between you and some poor bastard whose wife you're gonna turn into a widow, brother, you are going down.
There's a flip side to that coin. What if you do got me boxed in? And I gotta put you down? Because no matter what, you will not get in my way. We've been face to face, yeah. But I will not hesitate. Not for a second.
Maybe that's the way it'll be. Or, who knows?
Well, maybe we'll never see each other again.
Of course they'll see each other again. It's a freaking movie. Like, what are you talking about? They're not, well, maybe we'll never see each other again. Like, are you serious? Like, if this movie didn't end with them seeing each other after that scene, even though it's a tragedy and it makes us sad, if there had been a happy ending for both men, we would have been like, what the heck? Like, this movie sucks.
But would that have even been possible? Like, there is no happy ending for both men.
No, there's no happy ending for both men. And there's one line in there that, just to really kick off quickly, they're both in bondage. Because when Neil says, you do what you got to do, I'm going to do what I got to do, that is slavery. That is bondage. There's no freedom in that. That's not a free thinking person. That is a bondage person. I am bound to this. And that's another reason why it's a tragedy, because they're actually bound. Like, their desires aren't redemptive, right? They're not, right. Their desires aren't redemptive desires. They're not after good things. And even though you can kind of twist something of what each does want, you can kind of twist it into good, right? There's justice maybe on Vincent's side. I want to go and live off and just go live by myself and, have enough money for the rest of my life. But really, that's not what they're after. Really, that's not. I mean, if you really get down to it, they say that, but there's something else underneath that they're after. And
they think they don't think they want it, but they act like they want, like you said, do you have a regular life? It's like a regular life doesn't work it doesn't work for guys like us. I got to do what I got to do, as you mentioned. And when those moments that you don't have a choice, and we're going to talk about this, diving into this a little bit more, because you mentioned what they're chasing, what they're pursuing, what they're trying to accomplish. And there's also the aspect of the pressure, which to me, that's the name of the movie, right? It's the heat. And he says that quote, and I don't have it verbatim, but you don't let yourself get attached to anything that you can't walk away from within 30 seconds when the heat is on. Again, Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah. You belong to the city. That was Miami Vice.
But that idea of, you think that attachment is bad. We think that attachment is prison. We think that attachment is slavery. It's that C.S. Lewis. You want to protect your heart from being hurt, so you lock it up in a box, and where it's cold and dark and lonely, you realize that it's not, you don't get hurt, but that's because it's impenetrable. And the only place where your heart is truly safe from being hurt outside of heaven is hell. And that's where these guys find themselves. They find themselves in an isolated hell. Well,
and what Robert De Niro's character doesn't realize, what Neil doesn't realize, is that attachment is his salvation. It could have been his salvation. And he flirts with it. He's drawn to it, and he wrestles with it. And that's why it's a tragedy. He doesn't allow it to be his salvation. That, for both men, that attachment could have been their salvation. Like, there were those opportunities. And I think we have those opportunities as well. And if we are bound by our desires, if we're a slave to those things, it's like Paul says in Romans 7. He says, the things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I end up doing that. Like all the law could do. Because there's a big law theme in this movie to me as well. This is the death of the law. All the law can do is bring death. And this is what Paul is talking about in Romans 7. He's saying all the law could do was tell me what to do wrong. That's all the law
Right.
could do. The law says don't murder. Now I want to murder. Like
I hadn't even thought of it. Now I want to do it.
all the law could do was give me ideas of what to do wrong. That's all the law could end up doing. And that's when all we have is law and force. That's all we get. We just get death. The letter of the law kills. There's no life in that. There's no redemption. There's no love. There's no
hope.
And there's no hope. And so they're both bound by what they're chasing. What they're chasing isn't setting them free. What they're chasing is binding them and enslaving them and keeps them from the redemption and the salvation that was offered to them, both. And it's so beautiful how Michael Mann puts those scenes together. Like he keeps putting, like, I don't know if you noticed that, but he kept putting those scenes back to back. Like he'd put Neil in a scene where he's doing something. He's bullying somebody. He's bullying Charlene. And then he would put Vincent in a scene where he's bullying some criminal. Like he kept putting these scenes next to each other. He puts Vincent and his crew, his other officers, they all go out to dinner and they have a nice night together, and he's pulled away. And then he puts Neil in the same thing with his crew and the families. And you know what I mean? Like he keeps putting these scenes back to back, showing that they are basically the same person struggling with the same bondage, and that's a character study in that sort of sense.
I love the way that you put it. It's that contrast, because I did notice, you see him and his wife and Neil and Edie, and then even Chris and Charlene, you see the women and then the parties. But the setup is what you think is a mirror is more like those one-way glasses where you can see through it. And for them, it's a mirror. They see the bad guy. They see, in that diner scene. But what you mentioned before is in that moment, in that 10-minute scene, they are more intimate with the guy across, who is the enemy, who is the opponent, who is the opposition. He's the guy, the bad guy, right? Good guy, bad guy in the movie. They are more honest and intimate in that moment than not just they are with the women in their lives, but they are, I think, with themselves.
They literally share dreams with each other. like I was writing down, like I was sitting there going, these dudes have only known each other for 5 minutes. I mean, a couple minutes in the movie, but who knows? And Vincent initiates this conversation. Like he has no evidence yet, but he kind of wants to measure his opponent, because they've been dealing with each other at a distance, and they respect each other. Yeah. And they realize, like, oh man, this guy's actually really good. I've never gone up against somebody like this before. And so there's this respect because of what they're chasing. But when I was sitting there, I was like, man, they're sharing something more intimate in 5 minutes. Like, I'm sorry, when I first meet somebody, I'm like, I don't tell them about this recurring dream about my deepest fears. I'm just not going to do that. I mean, I might share with them some intimate things. I might share my story. I might share some things and be vulnerable. But I mean, there's a short list of people that I would share that stuff with. And Justine tries to get him to do this. Justine tries to get him to do this. Now, Edie doesn't know enough to try to get Neil to do this. Right. But Justine tries to get him to do this. She actually asks him, she's like, you just screw me. You just have sex with me. And then you don't talk. The talking goes away. And then you're off, or you leave me, and we don't have a relationship with you. And she keeps coming back to this. And so I don't know if this is a good time to play that clip, but there's that great.
I think you teed it up really well.
But there's a great moment where she's asking him to be intimate, and he is arguing that she doesn't really want to be intimate with him.
I guess the earth's shattered.
So why didn't you let Bosco take you home?
I didn't want to ruin their night, too. What was it?
You don't want to know.
I'd like to know what's behind that grim look on your face.
I don't do that. You know it. Let's go. Come on.
You never told me I'd be excluded.
I told you when we hooked up, baby, that you were going to have to share me with all the bad people and all the ugly events on this planet.
And I bought into that sharing because I love you. I love you fat, bald, money, no money, driving a bus. I don't care. But you have got to be present like a normal guy some of the time. That's sharing. This is not sharing. This is leftovers.
I see. What I should do is come home and say, "Hi, honey. Guess what? I walked into this house today where this junky asshole just fried his baby in a microwave because it was crying too loud. So let me share that with you. Come on, let's share that. And in sharing it, we'll somehow cathartically dispel all that heinous shit, right?" Wrong. You know why?
Because you prefer the normal routine. We fuck, then you lose the power of speech.
Because I got to hold on to my angst. I preserve it because I need it. It keeps me sharp, on the edge, where I gotta be.
You don't live with me. You live among the remains of dead people. You read the terrain. You search for signs of passing, for the scent of your prey, and then you hunt them down. That's the only thing you're committed to. The rest is the mess you leave as you pass through.
Before the scene, they had been at this restaurant. They had been having, like you mentioned, a dinner with their crew and dancing, and he got a text that he had to respond to.
He thought he did.
He thought he did. He chose. We always have a choice.
Yeah. So here, just as an aside, I'm sitting here going, no one else works for the police. Like he's the only detective that can respond to these things. Anyway, go ahead.
That's what sort of when it comes in, she's like, I didn't want to ruin everyone else's night because
Right.
you ruined ours. And what feels like, you know, he's being attacked in that whole idea of don't get attached to anything you can't walk away from. Because he's not attached to her. He's not committed to her, even though they're married and it's his third marriage. But what he's attached to is his idea of the prey that he's chasing. And there is a certain perceptive of, I don't want to rehash the horrors of my day because then I'm reliving them. She wants him to share, but it's not sharing the shit that he's going through. It's sharing his life. That a whole idea of presence really matters. And as men, it's really easy to leave the bulk of the meal on the table at work or wherever. And when you get home, all you have left is crumbs for your family. And the question that when we look in the mirror is what impact are we having on those closest to us? What mess are we leaving behind? And that can be a very, very unforgiving mirror. If you have the balls to actually ask your wife, what impact do I have on your heart?
Yeah. So I was young and in Korea with, missions organizations, and I was running a ministry to the military, and I became friends with a man who was older than me and was at the end of his career, towards the end of his career, and he had made Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. And I did not know this before I learned it, obviously, but being a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force is like becoming a 4-star general or something. Like very few enlisted people get to that rank. Like it's like less than 1% of enlisted people get to the rank of Senior Master Sergeant, like Chief Master Sergeant, right? Like generals and other officers will say, yes, sir. Yes, Chief. Because these guys know what they're doing and they have accomplished.
It's the highest enlisted rank you could get.
That's the highest enlisted rank you can get. And I sat across from this man and he was weeping because his wife back in America was ready to leave him. And he looked at me and he said, I spent my whole life climbing a ladder and I didn't realize it was leaning up against the wrong wall. Now, I've heard that phrase from other people, but he was the first guy to say it to me. He was the first guy to say it to me. And I hadn't had kids yet. Like, I was married for 4 years. What, you know what I mean? Like,
you're still basically on your honeymoon.
Hey man, I'm still on my honeymoon. You know what I'm saying? But that honeymoon doesn't have to end. That's a whole nother podcast. But I'm saying this to say that people deal with this. And in the movie, it's extreme because it's a movie and it's Michael Mann and it's Miami Vice. But by the end of the movie, his wife is on drugs because she can't deal with reality and having an affair, just to try to feel something, right? And she says something in that conversation that is so important. And we've gone over this before, but she says something that's so important. And she says, I love you no matter what. I'm going to be here and I'm going to love you no matter what you do, whether you're a bus driver, no matter, like, to her, the commitment went beyond his job,
right?
And was deeper than just what he did. She loved him as a person. And again, so many men, especially, find our identity in what we do as a job. But one day you're not going to have that job. You're going to retire, or you're going to get fired, or, a lot of times when guys get fired, then their whole identity goes up in the air, and they feel rejected. They feel like a failure, man's biggest fear, right? But she is trying to reach out to him to say, look, I want you to be around. And his stepdaughter needed him around, and she needed him around, but he kept pushing them away. And there was one amazing little scene. Again, these are tragic scenes, but there's one scene where he comes home late and she's getting ready to go out. He's like, where are we going? And she doesn't answer. And he goes, okay, well, where are you going?
Right.
She goes, I'm going out. And he goes to the kitchen and he has a moment to himself and he makes a decision. Like, he doesn't say anything, but he makes a decision, because he could have gone back in there and had a conversation, a possibly difficult conversation, but that would have taken bravery, right? That would have taken bravery to go back into the bedroom, to go back into the bathroom and say, I'm sorry, let's talk about this. What can we do, right? But what he does instead, he goes to what makes him feel good and is easy, which is he goes out hunting again. That's what he does. And like the next thing you know, he's out in a helicopter and he's chasing the dudes. And
right. That's what leads to the diner scene. He would rather spend time with the criminal than with his wife.
Rather spend time with the criminal. And, this is his third marriage. And, you kind of learn these things as the movie goes on. But his stepdaughter needed him too. Like, she kind of starts to reach out to him a little bit. And it's Natalie Portman. And she's still an amazing actress. But she is dealing with depression because she's rejected by her father. And here he could step in and be a father, but he runs to chase something good. And he continually chooses not to step up to what's important in life. And what it ends up doing is that evil that he's trying to keep away from them ends up finding them anyway. Ends up finding them out, because she goes into drugs and he's trying to save her from trauma and causes trauma.
Right.
I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like, his lack of being intimate with them actually causes the trauma he's trying to avoid. And it shows up in a very stark and shocking scene as he comes to his hotel or wherever he was and finds Natalie Portman in the bathtub, and she's tried to commit suicide. And oh my gosh, I mean, you have a daughter, right? And I have, 2 daughters, and it's just, it's disturbing to us because we're thinking, oh my God, what the heck would I do, right? And it's so emotional for him to do that. And so these are all opportunities for him to see the destruction that his life has caused. And the same thing happens to Neil through this is the theme. And it's just really unfortunate. But I think a lot of men, especially, but women too, they chase these things and they leave behind, or they don't prioritize the things that really matter in the long run.
And it leads to that scene at the end with they're in the hospital because Vincent takes her to the hospital and the mom is there. They have a bonding moment there in the hospital waiting room. And she's the daughter, she's going to be okay. And she says, do you think we have a chance? And he says, no. Basically, I'm not going to change who I am. Because even when he comes face to face with the impact that he's had on her and the daughter, he's still going to choose the hunt. He's still going to choose that. Because the opposite, or maybe the mirror position, the negative, in the old timey photos, you could go negative. The other force in play is that heat, that pressure. And you mentioned that weird dream scene. And so I have that clip where Vincent and Neil are sharing these dreams, but what the dreams reveal is what pushes them and what drives them.
I have this recurring dream. I'm sitting at this big banquet table, and all the victims of all the murders I ever worked are sitting at this table, and they're staring at me with these black eyeballs because they got 8-ball hemorrhages from the head wounds. And there they are, these big balloon people, because I found them 2 weeks after they'd been under the bed. The neighbors reported the smell. And there they are, all of them just sitting there.
What do they say?
Nothing.
No talk?
None. Just, they don't have anything to say. See, we just look at each other. They look at me. And that's it. That's the dream.
I have one where I'm drowning. And I gotta wake myself up and start breathing while I'll die in my sleep.
You know what that's about?
Yeah, having enough time.
Enough time to do what you want to do.
That's right.
You doing it now?
No, not yet.
And the cool thing about that is, because if in the diner, they're having a conversation, and on the rest of the scene, you can hear the other diners talking, but all you hear are the dishes clanking, and it puts them into a very sound, like a sound bubble, as they're sharing, like we mentioned, these very intimate things of, I'm drowning because I don't have time. I'm trying to get my stuff done so that I can have the time, so that I can do what I want to do. And he's saying, I've got all the victims of because I didn't get there soon enough. I didn't find them for 2 weeks. And I've got to hunt them down, because if I can hunt them down, maybe I can get some sleep. Maybe I can find rest. And that whole idea of this pressure, the heat, the pressure that we face, and it, in the movie, it's from the cops putting pressure on the criminals to, as you mentioned, there's a very thin line between the way the police act and the way the criminals act. From the wife, the family puts pressure. From the job, the work, I need more money, with Chris, with his gambling problem, and his wife is saying, this is all you got? And then we've got it from within, our pride, our loneliness. And that's how Edie gets to Neil early, because she flirts with him, and they're talking, and she says, don't you get lonely? He's like, no, I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. And she says, well, I'm lonely.
Right.
And her fixing her loneliness becomes more important when she discovers who Neil is. She's like, I've done all this stuff. You have a choice. You can come with me, and I'm not going to do it anymore because now I've got like $1 million or something. Or you can stay here and be lonely. And she chooses to go with him for some reason, basically because she doesn't want to be lonely anymore.
Well, let me just say this. If there are any women listening to this, I would love if you emailed us or messaged us or posted about this. This does not seem like a very female friendly movie, except for some of the things that Justine says in that scene where she's expressing herself and wanting him to open up.
Like, but she's not a great mom. She's just like, your barrettes are somewhere. You find them. I can't be bothered about your stupid barrettes.
Like, I've never heard a woman say she loves this movie, and I can't imagine why a woman would love this movie. Like, it would be so depressing. Like, even the women are like, okay, sure. Oh, you give me a choice, I'll kiss you. It's like, no, you know, this dude is killing people and stealing stuff. Like, you know, I was expecting her to like smack him and run.
But again, it comes back to those choices. She chooses. She's like, you can go. The door is open. I'm not. How long are you going to hold me here? You're free to go.
Yeah.
But she chooses to soothe her loneliness rather than sort of what she really knows is right.
Right. So going back to the dreams, I think the dreams are very important because for Vincent, you know, his wife says in that scene that you played, like, you hang out with dead people. Right. Like you, that's what you do. And he's saying, this is my dream. But I think it's interesting that in both cases, that is what happens at the end. The dream reveals the end of the movie for both men. Okay. Because he is sitting there saying, yeah, I'm around dead people. And Neil says, well, what do they say? Well, what can they say? They don't say anything. In other words, he's alone. He doesn't get any sort of response from them where he says, where they say thank you, or like he gets nothing positive out of this. There's a complete emptiness.
It feels like accusation.
Yeah, it feels like accusation, if anything. But what happens to him at the end of the movie is he ends up killing Neil and then holds his hand, and he's standing there alone with the dead man, right? So that actually comes true.
Yeah.
And then the dream for Neil is that he's going to run out of time. And then he gets the call. Oh, that dude you're looking for, he's in this hotel. I know where he is. And you know, but you're right on time.
You're home free. Yep.
And then he's like, nope, I got to go do something. And Edie says, do we have time? He goes, yep, we have time. But he doesn't have time. So in other words, both of these dreams are actually warnings. Like, this is what you need to stay away from, if anything. Like, this is the emptiness that you're a part of. And neither, again, because it's a tragedy, they don't pay attention to the signs in front of them. They don't pay attention to the reality, the truth that's being expressed to them. That scene, by the way, in the diner, wherever it is, where they're having coffee, is one of the best scenes for men movies, right? Ever. Like, people love that scene. Like, that is one of those scenes that everybody says is one of the best scenes. And I don't know about that podcast, but I bet they talk about that podcast, like just one episode on that scene. Like, it's such a great scene.
It is. I want to go back to that. Those moments, those crucial moments at the end of the movie. On one hand, on one side of the glass, you've got Vincent sitting there with his wife. His stepdaughter is going to be fine in the hospital. She has just invited him. Basically, we can work this out. And he says, I am who I am, basically. And he gets a page. And at first he doesn't answer it. On the other side, you've got Edie and Neil. They're in the car. You're home free. And as he says home free, they go through this tunnel like it's the light. They're going into heaven. And then the moment comes where they can't unchoose it. And she says, you can go. He's like, no, don't you need me to stay? She's like, no, you might as well go.
Yeah.
And he leaves, but not just leaves. He's running down the steps to get there, to get his guy. And with Edie, he says, nope, I got one thing to do. And then as he's coming back, that moment that he talks about, Neil sees Vincent coming down the crowd. They see each other. And Neil looks in the car and he sees Edie and walks away within 30 seconds. Just leaves her sitting there in the car because they can't change who they are. And that's the truth, right? In ourselves, in our own power, we can't change who we are.
Good.
But there is a scene very early in the movie that is it's a feel-good scene, which doesn't happen a lot in this movie. So Dennis Haysbert, who plays the president in 24, he's an ex-con. He gets out of jail. He goes and they said, he goes to a different diner. And he says, hey, they told me to come here to work because it's very hard for an ex-con to find work. And the guy said, okay, you're a grill cook. Okay, you're also going to do this. You're going to do this. If I get any lip, if you're late, if you miss work, I'm going to tell your parole officer that you're drunk, you're loaded, and you're going back to prison. And oh, by the way, you're giving me 25% of what you take. So he's being treated harshly, but again, very trapped in what he is. And so in the situation, and he feels like there's no escape. So he gets drunk and he's sitting there in this counter when Lily comes up, and Lily says something to him that I think is frequently, when we're feeling that hopeless, that when we feel like the heat is on, the pressure is on, and we're chasing, we are in prison and we can't change, or we've tried to change and we've failed again, then she has some words for him that I think we need to hear.
Hey, it's Lily.
Let's go, baby. I met the manager. Is that the boss?
Get time for what that motherfucker does every day.
Baby, can you just handle it till we find you something new? Can you do that?
Ain't a hard time been invented that I cannot handle. What you hanging with me for, Lily?
Because I'm proud of you.
You proud of me?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell you proud of me for?
Come on home.
Here is a man, and he's sitting there. He's like, I was in jail for what that guy is doing to me. He is robbing me blind, and I am trapped. I'm in prison. He's feeling ashamed. He's feeling the weight and the burden of all his mistakes. And he's like, why are you even here? Why are you with me? And again, going back to Paul in Romans, what a miserable man am I? It's like, why are you here? Why are you with me? And we say that to God. It's like, I screwed up again. I messed up. I look at the mess I made. And she says, I'm proud of you. And that doesn't make sense because he's not proud of himself. He's feeling lost. He's feeling broken. He's feeling imprisoned, even though he's out of prison, but he's still in jail, in bondage. He's like, and the thing is, there's no answer. And what's the invitation? Come home. And that's our invitation when we're in that mess.
When we're invited into, again, what's important. So he's distracted, and it's a real thing. I mean, that's incredibly discouraging, right? He's trying to make his life better, and he feels stuck again. He was stuck in prison. He feels stuck again. And then, of course, that ends up biting him in the end because he makes a bad decision. Because people who feel stuck end up making bad decisions. People don't stay stuck for long. They're going to try to get out of it some way. Usually they do it with bad decisions because they try to do it in their own power and they try to do something. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But when she says, I'm proud of you, that's what he needed to hear. Because I really wish on a writing point that she would have answered him like, you're actually trying. And she kind of does in the beginning. She's like, just stick it out. You'll get something better. Yes, this sucks, but you are on the right path.
She appeals to what he can do. He's like, hard time hasn't been invented. I can't do. Like, I can do that.
Yeah, right. And I keep waiting for him to go, I'm not gonna fall for no banana in the tailpipe. Like, he's the actor is such a great actor. Like, he almost has to play that sort of, role of the, the ex-con sort of thing. Like he did the president well, by the way, in 24, like that was his role. I really wish she would have said a little bit more like I'm proud of you because you're changing. You are transforming. You are in the midst, and it's just the beginning. Like, don't give up now, sort of something, and maybe not that cheesy, but something to that effect. But she does invite him home. She invites him to something important. Like, we have something that's worth fighting for. Just come home to that, and it'll be better.
Because transformation doesn't occur as fast as we want it to.
Right.
And I think that's part of that is this isn't the life he wants. And he feels, as you mentioned, stuck, and he feels helpless. And it ends up costing him his life as he decides to take a shortcut. He decides, he gets an invitation to go be the driver for Neil's group. And he gets shot and he dies. And you see Lily's reaction as she sees him, and she's crushed.
Yeah.
But this is also one of the few times where the woman in the situation invites the man, and he accepts.
Yeah, I agree. She's actually the best woman in the whole movie. Like she's
got
the one
3
that makes
seconds
the most, I know. She's the best written woman in the whole movie. So here's what's going on in the movie. One of the big themes that I was seeing today as I was watching it is you've got one man who is a cop, and he's trying to go out for justice. You've got one man who's a criminal, and he's trying to thwart the law, right? And then you have this man who is, what's his name, Brennan or Brendan or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Brendan. But he feels stuck he still feels stuck. He still feels, like you said, in prison. And all of this, again, this is the tragedy. Everything is bound by the law. Okay, I'm going to say this. Both men are in bondage to the law, even though one is a criminal. And you would think the criminal is more creative and he's more free. But no, guess what? He's still in bondage to the law. He is still in bondage to the idea of the law. People who are legalistic and the people who just do whatever they want to do, guess what? They are both in bondage to the law. They're both in bondage to the law. This is the reality. This is a spiritual reality. And I love that this movie shows this, that all of these three men that we're talking about and some of their crews here and there, they're all in bondage to the law, and they make destructive decisions in bondage to the law, right? Oh, just got to get one more. We got to get one more score. Got one more great score. It's millions of dollars or whatever. It's one more great heist, and I need the money because I'm in bondage to the bookies. There's still a law within the criminals, right? There's still something where Van Zandt, we haven't even gone over that whole, arc, but, Van Zandt, I got to kill these guys. I can't let these guys steal from me. They have to die. Like there's so much legalism and bondage in this whole movie, even among the criminals. It's all over the place. And in each case, especially with those two main characters and then with Brennan, the salvation and the redemption is relational. In every case, the salvation and the redemption that's offered to them is one of intimacy and relationship with others, and they choose differently. And that's why it's tragedy. But that's just something to remember about the law. The law can't do anything good, because even when the law is trying to catch the criminals, it's doing bad things. Vincent is making deals with criminals, and he's helping them against their competitors, and he's making these backroom deals with criminals, or the sergeant takes Charlene, and the choice he gives her is awful. Think about this. He tells her, look, if you don't help us, here's your choice. You either help us and you get away free, but in other words, she's betraying her husband.
Yeah.
She's betraying a relationship.
Which was interesting because she was already having an affair.
She was already having an affair.
But betraying him to the cops was worse.
Yeah, right? And then the other choice he gives her is, if you don't help us, then you're going to go to jail. And your kid, your little boy, is going to grow up without a mom or a dad, because we're getting this guy. We're getting Chris either way. So you either help us and it goes better for you, or your kid, Dominic, right, is going to grow up without any parents. He's going to grow up in the system, and he's going to steal a car, and he's going to go to jail, and he's going to learn how to be a criminal. You're going to ruin his life, right? I mean, that's all the law can do. All the law can do is punish. Yeah. That's all the law can do. It can't actually redeem anything. And this is all throughout especially the latter part of the Old Testament, but it's definitely in the New Testament. It's the law had no power to do anything. All it could do is reveal evil.
It's just
and
a
that's
mirror.
What you see. It's just a mirror. and that's what you see in this movie. And it's a tragedy because that's all you see. Yeah. Even though they were given opportunities, and the gospel is really an invitation to something different, to a relationship. Because she was like, okay, I get it. You're in this awful life, but you have an opportunity to do something different. With Neil, we're home free. With her, she's like, you don't have to answer the text. You don't have to answer it's not an emergency. His stepdaughter was in the hospital for trying to commit suicide. Like, that's a real emergency in his life. And that has more importance, but he doesn't take the opportunity to actually redeem what's important, and that's people. And of course, the gospel does that with God. He's like, you actually have an opportunity to chase me, and that's what he says at the end. He with his wife, Vincent says, "You were right about me. I am what I chase." Let me see if I can find it. He says, all I am is what I'm going after. And for me, what I think I have to ask myself is, what am I chasing? What am I really chasing? Now, that doesn't mean we don't go work jobs. It doesn't mean we don't do stuff. But what it means is all that I'm after, all that I'm doing, I'm chasing something. What am I chasing? And God says to chase me. The gospel is an opportunity for God to say, look, you were born to chase something. Female, male, doesn't matter. Man, woman, you were born to chase something. Chase me. Because if you chase all these other things, then it's going to lead to destruction. It's going to lead to evil. It's going to lead to unsatisfaction. You're not going to know what's important. But if you chase me, then what else is there? What better thing is there to chase? Like, if you chase God, he gives you life. He literally says in Matthew, 6 or 7, somewhere in there, he goes, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, God's kingdom and the righteousness of God. And all of this other stuff that you think you have to chase, you'll actually have. Like, all this other stuff will work out. You don't have to work. And that's why that one scene with Brennan is so powerful, because she says, just come home. In other words, like, all this stuff that you worried about. Yes, I'm not saying it's not important. Food and clothing, it's important. It's not important. There's something greater that we have to chase. And what that will do is align the right priorities in our life and place everything in its proper context. And that's what he's saying. See, he's not being, well, he is being at least jealous. God is a jealous God, but he's not being, a narcissist. God's not saying, just seek me, but what he's saying, if you seek me, everything else will fall in its proper place. And it's a gift, and that's the gospel.
And that's what you see, is that invitation to a relationship. And we have the choice. Is our life going to be a tragedy where we're living in denial of the truth? Or are we going to live a comedy where we realize the truth and make our choices accordingly by chasing the right thing? Is our life guided by what we're chasing or by what is pressuring us? So this has been Heat. The heat is on. Still not the song.
No.
With Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney. Visit our website, menatthemovies.com/podcast, where we'll have questions and resources to links to the books and websites and podcasts that we've mentioned, and we look up the quotes and make sure they're right. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?